Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Dead Malls, your one home for the coziest mall explorations and everything history related. In this evening's episode, after the whirlwind experience that was Midway Mall and its dozens of 90s charms in the last episode, I was reunited with my good friend Andrew, and we continued our adventure to see all of the area's richest hidden retail gems. And as evening set out across western Pennsylvania, he took me to two malls in the great Keystone State, each fantastic and unique in their own ways. And with these two once iconic shopping meccas now dead, and one of them even now abandoned, I just knew I had to do them justice, and tell their equally interesting stories. And why not put them together? So yes, for the first time since Season 2, I think, we have ourselves two malls in one video. But before I spoil any of today's episode, I want to shout out our winner, who was able to successfully guess both of the next malls. Very nice job, JGB. If you'd like to have your chance of being shouted out in the next episode, be sure to stick around for the next challenge. Anyways, so let's begin with our first mall here in the small town of Hermitage, Pennsylvania, the now abandoned Shenango Valley Mall.
Come to JCPenney and find great deals on denim for the whole family, like Arizona jeans for guys and juniors. Buy one, get one for a penny. Also available in extended sizes. Plus, stack on the savings and get your $10 off coupon on the JCPenney app. Hurry, sale ends Sunday. That's getting your pennies worth. JCPenney. Coupon valid 25 days, 27 on select items in store and at Etsy.com. Buy one item at regular price, get the second item equal or less value for 1 cent on the same category for two. Multiplies by 7 colors and size. See store at Etsy.com.
Starting off here in the Shenango Valley Mall, which is now sitting abandoned and awaiting demolition, this was an odd one because the primary mall area is this great long concourse between its three anchor stores, that of which looks far more like an airport terminal or a train station. But then in the back, there's this strange hidden area containing an entire wing of the mall which hasn't been touched since 1976. It's 70s aesthetics overload, so be sure to stick around for that. But how did this little mall come about, and just how deep does its story go? Well, as we venture down this tiny corridor that was once the old Kaufman's wing, let's begin its tale. The tale of a mall which built up an entire town. Shenango Valley Mall's story begins in the small town of Sharon, Pennsylvania, before Hermitage was even a thing. The land the mall sits on was, for the longest time, a dairy farm, then a driving range, and then finally in 1966 would be sold to a group of mall developers called Crown American, who Pennsylvanians might know the name of as they developed many of the most architecturally striking one-story malls around the state, and the new Shenango Valley would be no different. Crown, seeing potential in the area's suburban growth, plotted the future mall, to be anchored by Sears, JCPenney, and a WT Grand grocery store, along with 30 inline shops and stores. Shenango Valley Mall would be born. The quintessential suburban mall experience, all bundled up into a comfy small town size. Construction would occur over 1967, and the grand opening was planned for the spring of 1968. we open Shenango Valley, I'll take you back in time to what this mall would have looked like long ago, only preserved in this small back wing. Accessible through the restroom hallway near JCPenney, this whole area would have once connected to the main mall concourse, but was cut off in an upcoming remodel. We'll get back to that later though. For now, enjoy Retro Shenango and the music, and let it all take you back to a simpler time. A time when these halls would have all been crowded with people and filled with life. On March 13th, 1968, Shenango Valley Mall would open its doors for business, beginning its long and fairly prosperous life. Opening with day one stores such as Father and Son Shoes, Park Lane Hosiery, Record Mart, Hot Sam, Radio Shack, Hickory Farms, and King's Jewelry, among many others, SVM quickly became a driving force for retail in the area, pulling in residents not only from Sharon, but all over western Pennsylvania. Crown's simple park-like mall aesthetics, benches, ceiling trims, and fountains dotting the corridors would be the looks that consistently brought people back to shop its halls. And it wasn't until the mid-70s in which the first additions to the mall would begin to take shape. Props to my friend Andrew for showing me all of that. Now I did know that that hidden area existed going into here, but I didn't know exactly where it was in the mall, and I honestly probably would have walked right on by, as it's just this small hallway opening, and quite a liminal one at that. But out we go, back to the real world, the boring, whitewashed train station mall. In 1974, the concourse in front of Sears would be expanded, adding several new stores and fountains. This wasn't the mall's only addition though, as then again in 1976, the North Wing would be built, the only portion remaining featuring SVM's OG aesthetics. 1976 was a big year, not only for the mall but for its new town, which would be founded that year, after the mall and its naturally resulting suburban sprawl surrounding it had gained independence. And so, in '76, Hermitage, Pennsylvania, with Shenango Valley Mall as its heart, would be born. In '76, after all this had occurred, W.T. Grant would close and become a Strauss department store, which would become a Kaufmann's a decade later in 1986. The 80s and 90s were the peak of Shenango Valley Mall, and I really wish I could find photos of the mall during this time because I can really only imagine how colorful and vibrant it used to be, back before it got this sterilized look. Let's get to that, by the way. By the late 90s, name brands weren't really interested in sticking around old outdated malls, and Crown, in an attempt to keep the mall relevant, would completely renovate it in 1997. The North Wing at this point only had 2 operating stores within its jaggedy corridor, and the idea of reusing it as office spaces would be floated around, but Crown would ultimately end up just cutting it off from the mall and renovating dozens of storefronts in its place. Through this renovation, the mall would be given its current airport terminal look, and sadly, all of the fountains between Sears and JCPenney would be removed. By 2000, SVM was at 90% occupancy, still a flourishing shopping hub. However, shopping trends were changing, and less came back to shop at the mall year by year. Crown, seeing this unfold, would sell it in 2004 to a realty group called Lightstone, and this is where a very noticeable decline would begin. In August of 2006, Kaufmann's would become Macy's, a sign of the changing times. In 2009, after Lightstone failed to make multiple payments on the property, the mall would go into the hands of Jones Lang LaSalle, and under new ownership, the neglect would only worsen. There was a very noticeable slowdown post-2010, and it wasn't until 2017 in which both Sears and Macy's would close their underperforming stores simultaneously. That's when the mall would really start to go downhill, with 2 voids on the directory leaving JCPenney as the mall's sole remaining anchor. Shenango Valley, now floundering, went over the span of 10 years from a decent mall to a very dead one. In 2018, Jones Lang LaSalle defaulted on the mall, and a group called Iowa Square Realty would pick it up for just $50,000 in a sheriff's sale. However, they too would fumble the bag and would even end up with court dates and fines for unpaid rent and taxes, along with a myriad of other maintenance problems. It seemed as though nobody could break through and crack the case that was Shenango Valley Mall. Upon Iowa losing it in 2019, another group consisting of members of the McConnell family, the family which originally owned the land before the mall was built atop it, would interestingly buy it back, putting forth total redevelopment. There was just one last problem, and that lay with the mall's final anchor. It seems as though I've run out of mall and still have a little bit of story left. It's alright, we'll finish the story of Shenango as we drive around the backside here. But JCPenney back in 1968 signed an agreement with Crown American where they would have the final say over any big store closures and mall-wide changes pertaining to the JCPenney store. They rigorously fought McConnell's firm, LRC, in court, even taking it to the Supreme Court. LRC would lose interest in 2022, selling the mall one final time in August to a group called Butterfly Holdings, LLC. Through 2023, JCPenney would lose further appeals in the courts, and finally give up when in May of 2024, they would announce that the store would be closing, along with the entire mall. And finally, after 56 years, Shenango Valley Mall would close its doors for the last time on May 31st, 2024. And the site now sits, as of recording this in September of 2024, awaiting total demolition for a new lifestyle center. The story of Shenango Valley is one we've heard a dozen times here before. An older mall simply couldn't keep up with the changing times, failing to modernize and simply stuck in the past as a tomb of outdated commerce. Shenango Valley Mall is now just another mall to join a growing list of closures this year of 2024. But to so many growing up and living in western Pennsylvania during its heyday, don't be sad it's gone. See yourselves lucky that you got to experience the golden years here. As for us living in the present and in the coming years, this once beautiful mall is going to be reduced to an ugly scatter of car-centric big box. More useful, sure, but where did we lose the panache along the way? It's sad to have to watch these far more beautiful places go and be replaced with newer age blah. Hopefully one day architects can look back and find inspiration in those very artists who designed our first malls and shopping centers. But who knows, maybe one day in the far future, we'll see those very classic 70s designs just come back in some sort of new age way. Anyways, let's head down the interstate to the second mall of tonight's episode, the beautiful sunset-bathed oasis that was Beaver Valley Mall, the most underrated 90s mall in the state. Beaver Valley is a mall that I had no intention of filming, or even seeing. I genuinely didn't even know this place existed, but Andrew insisted that there was one last mall for me, and it did not disappoint. Beaver Valley, like many, finds itself struggling in the mid-2020s. With little name brands actually left, the mall clings to its remaining anchors for life support, while others have already been converted into other uses. Beaver Valley Mall's story begins under similar circumstances to SVM, but BVM was built for a much different motive, the automotive. You see, before the 376 tollway was built, the only ways to travel north and south along western Pennsylvania was by hugging the small highways that dodged in and out of Monaca, Rochester, and Beaver. But in 1965, that would all change, as the Beaver Valley Expressway would begin construction, linking the cities directly with Pittsburgh and providing easy access across the Ohio River. To almost sort of link the towns and all of this new freeway infrastructure together would be the area's crown jewel, a brand new shopping hub, which would sit atop the bluffs overlooking the valley, almost like a gargoyle atop its throne. The Beaver Valley Mall would officially be born. Before we go on any further, I just wanted to point out how this mall manages to capture that perfect modern-day mall feel. Like, it doesn't feel outdated one bit, yet it has plenty of retro character and so many unique features, which just makes it stand out. From its cortivae trees, I see a reference to Rolling Acres, the roaring fountain, and the Christmas lights, the hidden neons, the reddish-brown accents following those gantry-like designs in the ceilings and streetlights. Ugh, everything about this mall was just so much fun to look at, and I was not disappointed one bit, unlike the boring train station that was Shenango Valley. And of course, there's all of the 90s style storefronts, but I'll let you enjoy it all for a little bit. As if it couldn't get any better, just down the hall from the center court fountain was the Valley Cafe food court, Beaver Valley's official food court, which didn't originally open with the mall. Long ago, all of this area was just the main entrance, but honestly, I like it so much more as the food court. Here we get some hints into just how bad the situation really is here at BVM. From lines of abandoned food stalls to a mall train ride which doesn't seem to be receiving much attention, it didn't look too good. But hey, at least you can still get some Chick-fil-A and go gamble your life savings away at the casino. Ah, the American dream. Originally the site of the Pettibon Raccoon Golf Course, construction crews would set out in spring of 1968, raising all of the land and creating a giant sea of concrete parking. Route 18 would be extended out, connecting Monaca, the new mall, and the interstate into a convenient car-friendly package. Spearheaded by Cafaro, who we've mentioned here on the channel a few other times in the past, the steel skeleton of the mall quickly took shape, and anchor store Gimbel's would be the first to open in November of 1969, followed up by the second, the Joseph Horn Company, in summer of 1970. And after 2 years of waiting and anticipation, the giant new Beaver Valley Mall, packed with over 100 stores in its layout, would finally open its doors for business.
I love this little train display. This is so cool.
They might not have Build-A-Bear here at Beaver Valley, but at least they have Build-A-Burger. On September 23rd, 1970, Beaver Valley Mall would hold its official grand opening ceremonies, opening its third anchor Sears to complete the giant plush-shaped layout. Originally, each of the mall's anchor courts featured fountains surrounded by plants, conversation areas, and even fruit trees. But I think this article from the Beaver County Times talking about the majesty of the new shopping center sums up the magic of Beaver Valley a little better than I can. Quote, the mall had tropical touches, with fountains, real orange, lemon, and avocado trees, and imported lava rock and petrified wood. Some of the stores that launched at the grand opening and are recalled by longtime residents were the Dr. Pet Center, Paris Boutique, Peck & Peck, Susie's Casuals, National Record Mart, Woolworths, Chess King, Standard Sportswear, Lerner's Clothing, and the Yum Yum Tree. Original restaurants included Sweet William, Hot Sam Pretzels, and Carousel Snack Bar. A few years later, Cheerios Top of the Mall restaurant would open and become a real local hotspot. In the mid-70s, another higher-end eatery arrived in York Steakhouse. The teenage population, though, frequented Pizza Boy or Charlie Chan's, and Orange Julius always filled a niche. Close quote. Making sure that we don't wander too close to the backrooms boundary that is an old FYE, we instead travel down to the old Boscov's, which was the coolest retro department store I've ever been in. Filled with chandeliers and neons galore, this old Boscov's was well worth the explore. But first, of course, Andrew had to be caught riding the dinosaur. Which, why does it have a steering wheel? What? Through the 70s, with brands galore and even a twin-screen cinema, Beaver Valley Mall would become the dominant retail hub in the area, attracting shoppers in ways that malls like Shenango Valley could only hope to achieve. Beaver Valley and its gargantuan atriums had that super regional mall status, and even shoppers from as far as Pittsburgh would travel to the mall, just to see what it had in store. By 1979, BVM had reached its peak, recording 100,000 shoppers within its halls in just one weekend. A little chaotic sounding? Yes, but that's growth for you, and let the idea of the entire population of a small city filling these exact same empty halls stay in your mind, because it might not look like much nowadays, but back then, the mall was the driving force for anything commerce related in the area, driving the growth of the Beaver Valley itself and solidifying itself as a popular hotspot, not just for shopping, but meeting friends after school, or perhaps walking its concourses. Whatever satisfaction you were looking for, BVM was usually there to scratch that itch. And now into this old Boscov's we go. Now, compared to a lot of their other ugly, modern, blandified stores, this is one of the few remaining which still features its OG late 90s aesthetics, which includes tons of amazing neon. So of course, for the very retro department store, I just had to throw in the very retro department store music. It was only fitting, so I'll let you enjoy the neons for a little bit, and I'll get back to you guys in just a little bit. Enjoy. On the floors, it looks like an old Toys R Us. Wow. What do you think of this old toy section in this Boscov's? Don't you miss it when toy stores used to look like this? I personally, as a kid, can remember faint memories of being in Toys R Us stores, and them always having this sort of feel with the checkered, colorful store tiles and the colorful feels everywhere. They just don't make them like this anymore. Gimbel's, after its conglomerate and parent company went bankrupt, closed its doors in 1986, and would soon after become a Kaufmann's. The 80s were a relatively neutral time for the mall. While it continued as a shopping destination, shoplifting and even several car thefts over the years reminded shoppers that Beaver Valley had no dedicated security force. In 1990, massive changes were made to completely overhaul the mall, giving it the look you see today. A new 8-bay food court, potted trees, stage, fountain, and even a new entrance would all take shape. A beautiful geometric wonderland, which kept reminders of the days of old, as if you look closely at the anchor court areas, you can see the old fountains still exist, just covered over all these years later. By 1995, Horns would close their doors, and the space would for a short time become a Lazarus, but would eventually be taken over by Boscov's in 1998. Boscov's wasn't the mall's only new anchor addition, however, as that same year, JCPenney would join as the mall's fourth anchor, constructing their new store right at the former main entrance. Going into 2000 with these new looks, new names joining the lineup, and a healthy new image, Beaver Valley really looked like it had it all, staying ahead while other malls like SVM nearby fell to the wayside. But unfortunately, other factors completely out of the mall's hand would begin to play in, and almost immediately. In October of 2001, the mall at Robinson would open, closing the gap in terms of regional mall service between Pittsburgh and the Beaver Valley. Pretty much overnight, a major source of BVM's foot traffic would disappear, and the emergence of new massive big box stores just down the street along the newly expanded Wagner Road was too stealing away a large chunk of the mall's foot traffic. In 2003, the mall was shown in a pretty negative light when, in November, Chi-Chi's, operating an attached restaurant, would be ground zero for the largest hepatitis outbreak in US history. Overall, 660 cases would be reported, and 4 people would lose their lives, all because of some scallions which had been imported from Mexico. The entire Chi-Chi's chain would actually go out of business after this incident. Needless to say, it was a pretty grim time around BVM, but hey, at least we got mall jazz to get us by. Kaufmann's would, of course, similar to our previous mall, convert their store into a Macy's in 2006. And a year later, Dick's Sporting Goods would hop onto the roster, becoming the mall's new fifth anchor. Now, I do know that at one point, BVM featured a Woolworth's junior anchor, and seeing Dick's Sporting Goods in such a large location really just makes me wonder, was that possibly the former Woolworths space, or was that elsewhere? I honestly have no clue. Let me know down below in the comments if you do. Where was the Woolworths, a tongue twister there, and what year did it close?
Yeah, I love these light things.
The early 2010s were a stagnant time for the mall. Like many others across the nation, older name brands were pulling out all over, and for a short time being filled with mom and pop shops, but eventually ending up like you see them today. Sears, deciding to hit the eject button pretty early on, would close their Beaver Valley store in June of 2016, becoming a Rural King in 2017, which has no mall access. However, as Rural King filled the empty void left by Sears, another would appear as Macy's closed their doors, and for a few years would sit empty before eventually ending up like you see it today, a giant U-Haul storage. There were plans to make it more of a bougie and hip lifestyle area called the Shops at Beaver Valley, complete with offices, restaurants, and other mixed-use purposes. However, these plans would be shelved by the pandemic. Through that time and in 2020, JCPenney announced they would be closing their Beaver Valley location. However, thankfully would stick around, at least for now. I am curious though as to what the alternate reality looks like where JCP did leave. Would the mall still be open? Well, it's thoughts to ponder. Through those years and the last few years in general, the mall really has pretty much lost the remaining name brands it has. Of course, you see all the stores, like you see in most dead malls, like Bath & Body and GNC, but how much longer can they stick around, with the halls quieter and quieter every day? Folks, I want to thank you all so much for joining me for not just the one, but for both of the malls this evening. Shenango Valley and Beaver Valley were both so unique in their own ways, and I hope that through this video, I was able to take some of y'all on a walk down memory lane and preserve some historic document of these once iconic malls. If any of you are ever in the area and you want to see a mall with true character, I highly recommend stopping by Beaver Valley. Everything about this place was just so aesthetically pleasing, and it makes me sad that while uglier, blandified malls continue to thrive, amazing retro malls like Beaver Valley are left to the wayside. But hey, it's still open, so its future's unwritten. As for Shenango Valley, well, Godspeed in shopping mall heaven. I also want to take a quick moment and shout out my friend Andrew, who showed me both of these malls and even provided this crispy exterior drive-around footage. Check out his channel for even more Dead Mall content if you haven't already. If you guys enjoy my Dead Mall videos, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you don't miss out on future episodes. And if you would like to support me further, consider checking out the Patreon for sneak peeks at future videos and loads of bonus content. Next week we'll be live at a mall of your choosing, but 2 weeks from now we'll be back once again, this time to begin day 2 of our journey, starting off at a turquoise paradise of 80s wonder, located in a town just south of Pittsburgh. Guess which mall we'll be at, and I'll shout you out in the next episode. But until then, have yourselves a lovely evening, and peace out guys. See you later.